Unless you're a fan of the Los Angeles Dodgers or the Detroit Tigers, you're probably not going to like our takes on your playoff hopes.
Step up to the plate. It's the Locked On MLB Squad Show, sponsored by Gametime. From the Dodgers to the Astros, the Mets to the Rangers, and everyone else in the league, with the experts of the Locked On Podcast Network bringing you the most comprehensive breakdown of all the action around the horn. We're coming in spikes up, no hurt feelings allowed, so squad up.
Welcome into the Locked On MLB Squad Show, the latest edition. This one's going to be a small squad show with a little bit of West Coast bias here, as we are joined by Booney from Locked On A's. Myself, I'm a Midwesterner, part of Locked On Reds and your channel manager for the Locked On MLB channel. My name is Jeff Carr, and joining us, of course, is the voice of Locked On MLB, Sully. Coming in, we are talking about playoff teams ahead of the trade deadline and kind of doing a bit of a power rankings based on tiers, because there's been a few trades, but unless your name is Rafael Devers and you went to the Giants a long time ago, nobody else has really made any sort of impactful trades. So before there are any moves, we're going to tell you who's going to win the World Series here on this Locked On MLB Squad Show that's brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the promo code Locked On MLB to save $20 off your first purchase. All right, folks. I mean, we're talking about the odds and who we like. And right now, FanDuel loves the Tigers and the Dodgers to be the two teams in the World Series. Are they
very
wrong?
brave? Very brave. By the way, can I just quickly address the elephant in the room for fans of Locked On A's, Locked On MLB? Booney and I, last time I appeared.
Couples counseling here. This is what
this is not an intervention. Booney and I got into a little bit of a row. All is good. Booney's a great guy. But in case anyone's wondering, because this is our first appearance together, we're good. We've talked about it, and Jeff said you two better. You would think that Jeff would be in between the two of us on the screen right now, but
that's what I thought. There we go.
There we go. The elephant in the room is not Stomper, and so I just wanted to address that right out of the gate. There, so. We're good. We're good.
Yeah, oh boy, we did not run the isolation offense here to keep everybody out of the room. If you're wondering, we are going to have a nice small squad talk about who's the best and who is contenders, pretenders, all that good stuff. Because I mean, right now, even though the Dodgers can't seem to beat the Milwaukee Brewers, they seem to be beating everybody else in the National League, despite how deep that league is.
Hey, let's just make one thing clear here before we disparage the Brewers. As we're recording this right now, it's 0-0 Milwaukee and Seattle. In fact,
and the Cubs lost. Yeah.
But if the Brewers win this game, say it with me, the Brewers will be the best team in baseball in terms of win-loss percentage, which is how we rank the best team in baseball. So before we say, man, I can't believe the Dodgers got swept by the Brewers, you have to say, wow, the best team in baseball swept the series. So, I mean, I didn't go to FanDuel and say, I thought the Brewers were going to remain pretty good, but I didn't think there would even be the possibility. Even if they lose today, it'll be late July, and they will be tied for the best record in baseball. Folks, it's 1957 all over again. They're going to be having a World Series parade in Milwaukee. By the way, Milwaukee has had a World Series parade more recently than Cleveland. I digress. Obviously the Dodgers are the sexy pick. I didn't pick them at the beginning of the year. I picked Philadelphia. I like the Phillies pitching better, and I do think that if the Mets didn't upset Philadelphia last year, I think Philadelphia would have beaten Los Angeles last year. But they didn't, and the Dodgers are the defending champs, and they're obviously very good, even though they're on a terrible stretch right now. But as I said to a friend of mine who's a big Dodger fan, you'd rather have this terrible stretch now than in October, because they've had that where they're the best team, and then they suddenly have a bad week in October, and suddenly, next thing you know, they're watching the Diamondbacks in the World Series, saying, what the hell just happened?
You know what's interesting about this year and with the trade deadline coming up is with so many teams so close to getting a wild card spot. I mean, you're talking about, for example, the Angels just 4 out of a wild card in the American League.
Yeah.
The Reds, I think 3.5, 4 out of the wild card in the National League. Rangers 2.5 out. Or I think it's going to be quieter than we think it's going to be, just because teams are on the. I mean, are we sellers? Are we buyers? A deal has to be perfect for them to make the move, I believe.
And you also look at the last bunch of years, we've had teams like, the Braves had a losing record at the trade deadline. They win the World Series that year. The Phillies were stumbling after the All-Star break in 2022. They go to the World Series.
Mm-hmm.
The Diamondbacks had an up, and they actually were pretty good the first half that year, but then they had a horrific month. I remember because Millard was on my show every other week. It was going like, and they were like, it was like the Hindenburg. They go to the World Series. Last year, the Tigers were sellers at the there. So should they sell Skubal? And they got to within 1 win of the American League Championship Series. And last year, one of the biggest egg on my face that I ever had was I was begging the Mets to sell because, hey, you've got all these movable parts.
Yeah.
No one else is selling. You could make a mint, and you're not going to make the playoffs. I'm sorry, Mets. They got to Game 6 of the NLCS. So all these teams are on the bubble thinking like, wait a minute, we could actually, not only that, I mean, Booney make a great point there, but there's also the teams that are currently in the wild card in the American League. The Yankees are playing bad news Bears level defense. The Mariners, let's face it, don't have a great history of being down the stretch the last few years. The Red Sox, I don't know what the hell they are. The Rays, who are a game and a half out, are going to be playing all their games on the road. They're like, they're on a minor league ballpark as well. And so those 4 teams, because the Rays are on just barely on the outside looking in, if you're Texas, if you're Cleveland, if you're the Angels, if you're the Royals, you're thinking, wait a minute, we're one good August and them having one bad August away from being in the fray.
So Booney, that means that you're picking the Tigers to win the American League, right? It's just going to go chalk. There's no reason to worry about anybody else.
Absolutely. I tell you what, this Brewer team is impressive. And what impresses me about them is their toughness, is their togetherness, is the chemistry they bring. When the manager in the midseason called out half their team for the type of play they had, seems to really have kicked back to them. Got to give him a lot of credit. I think he's up for manager of the year and what he's doing. But this Brewer team is just a hard-nosed, tough team. Can they continue to play this type of ball when it gets to playoff type baseball?
Well, they also have good pitching and inserting Mizorowski into the rotation.
Huge.
And then getting that healthy. I mean, I know this is a hot take from me, but when you have really good starting pitching and you're going to stay in a lot of games, even right now, we're seeing the fact that they were being no hit into the 6th inning. They're now winning 2-0.
Is that right?
Okay. Even when and by the way, about the Mariners. About the Mariners, this is the second time in the last 2.5 weeks that they've had a pitcher go relatively deep into a game with a no-hitter. They lost that one game to the Yankees, and now they're losing this game. So, by the way, if you're chasing the Mariners, they're finding ways to say, no, after you. And this is from a guy wearing a Seattle Pilots shirt.
And to add to your Brewers point, I mean, this team traded Devin Williams in the offseason, and their bullpen got better. Like, you don't get better when you trade your closer.
They lost Adames.
Yeah. They lost Adames, and the lineup just keeps on churning out runs. It keeps doing the things it needs to do. Like, Pat Murphy looks like a genius right now, and the front office in Milwaukee look like geniuses right now. And their player development, that whole organization just looks like it is ran super well. And we're going to have that storyline when the Brewers and the Dodgers meet in the postseason, where they say the Dodgers haven't beat this team yet this year. So that's going to be a lot of fun to hear them talk about that. That makes that intriguing to me. The guys that have a really good shot to win the World Series, but there are just as many teams, including my own, that are ridiculous when it comes to, are they even going to make the dance? Because my gosh, it's a crowded field. You've got to head on over to FanDuel right now and check out all the different odds on like futures for league winners, for the pennant winners right now, because they're flipping in the American League. It has been the Yankees for a long time, but now it's the Tigers who are favored to win the American League. Odds at plus 270 to get that American League pennant. Yankees right behind them at plus 310. Astros not far behind either at plus 410. And then you got the Blue Jays at 7-1. Over on the National League side, it's still the Dodgers. They're at plus 120. They're probably not going to be overtaken. I mean, they've been swept twice in the last 2 weeks, and they're still favored. And it's almost even odds, plus 120 to bet on the Dodgers to win the National League. The Phillies are right behind them ish at 5-1, and then the Cubs at plus 550. That's on over at FanDuel. Plus, if you're a new user and you place a $5 wager that wins, you'll get $150 in bonus bets. FanDuel.com, they're America's #1 sports book. Your favorite baseball team has a Locked On podcast. You better check that out, whether it be the A's with Booney over on Locked On A's, whether it be the Reds with me and my co-host Stephen Offenbaker on Locked On Reds. And, of course, we've got the league-wide coverage with Sully every single day and every night. We've got Locked On MLB Game Night. They watch every game every night so that you don't have to. All right, let's get into the really annoying group. And I say annoying because the Reds are part of this, and the Reds are annoying. I love my Cincinnati Reds, but they're annoying. And every time I turn on a game, they could be playing a really good team, and I know they're going to play really well. And they could be playing a team that's under 500, and I have a bad feeling they're not going to play that well as they did on Monday night against the Washington Nationals, giving up a 10-burger to the Nationals, who we all know have just been a powerhouse when it comes to scoring runs this year. So all that being said, the Reds are still very much in the wild card race in the National League. You've got a team that is being labeled as a bona fide seller in the Arizona Diamondbacks, who are still very much in the hunt for the wild card spot in the National League. And I'm pretty sure that the A's are still in the wild card hunt for the American League, because that is such a convoluted thing. So, of the teams that are close, who is the most likely to make it in, and who should be buyers as we head into this trade deadline?
Take this, Booney.
You know, as far as who gets in, I mean, in the American League, I don't know how. I don't think as far as a whole conference, I don't think the American League is very, very good. I think the Rangers could take everybody's surprise with the type of pitching they have. And if their hitting just gets it going, they could contend for a World Series. Tampa Bay's right there. Cleveland's right there. The Angels are right there. Royals, Twins. I think the only real 3 teams that are out of it, Orioles, A's, and White Sox. As far as who I think is going to make the postseason in the American League, I think it's going to be the Yankees, Red Sox, and I'm going to go with the Rangers. As far as your wild card teams,
I 100%. Well, I'm not sure about the Red Sox, but I 100% agree that Texas, who I picked to win the American League pennant, and they're right now. I mean, they're like as of this recording, they're a game above 500 and 2.5 games out, 3 games back in the loss column. You put them in a short series, I'm terrified of them, and that's why at the trade that, because first of all, and my father, wherever he is right now, if he's not up there, no one is. Loved the Giants, and he loved him some Boch. And in Bochy, you trust. It's every other year. 2 years ago, they won the World Series, and you're just seeing this team with decent pitching. All the Rangers should do in this trade deadline is get a major league hitter, get a good hitter. Just someone, because they have some major holes in that lineup. Get a solid major league hitter and put them in that short series, because the point I made earlier, the Yankees are going to shoot themselves in the foot. Walter Matthau would look at this defense and say, "Do you know what? I can't deal with them." How about that for a timely reference? The Mariners they can find a way to lose any game. The Red Sox, I have no idea what the heck they are, and so the chances of one of those teams flopping, and I'm putting the Yankees in the possibility to potentially flop, because they're only. They're only 4 games. They're only 4 games up in the loss column of a playoff spot. Texas would terrify me. In the National League, I think it's a lot clearer. I don't mean to take no offense in this, Jeff. The group of Brewers, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, the Cubs, the Mets, and San Diego. I don't think any of the teams following them unless one of them has a massive injury or just a complete 2011 Red Sox collapse, I don't see any of them giving up room to the Reds, to the Cardinals, who can't get out of their own way, and San Francisco, who just I was watching part of the game tonight. I said, "Do you guys know this game counts? You guys know?" I mean, let me tell you something. Booney, Jeff, and I have all tied the Giants starting pitcher tonight in outs recorded.
Yeah.
0.
Yeah.
Zipperino.
It's
bad
crazy
for the
how that's
bullpen.
moved. Yeah, like the Giants themselves are a pretty talented team, but you're right. Like they just seem to find ways to lose important games, and that's the same way with the Reds. Like the Reds have the second hardest schedule the rest of the season in the major leagues, and I wonder a little bit like can they rise to that occasion? But it's all going to be on what the front office does, and historically, betting in the Reds front office has been a bad bet. And they've been good at resetting things these last couple of years, but now they're not resetting. Now they're building. And that's not something that they have done. That's not something that Nick Krall has experience in doing. And to see how that's going to turn out, like I have ideas and I have hope, but I cannot say that there's a connection between that and reality right now. I got to see it happen. And if it doesn't happen, it's not going to shock me, but it's really going to disappoint me because it feels like they're so close, and they messed this up back in 2023 because they were ahead of the division in 2023 and they did nothing. And then they fell apart and didn't make the playoffs. So from that perspective, like the teams who are on the bubble, right? I mean, I don't know why I didn't use that term earlier, but the teams who are on the bubble are so fascinating because of, like you said, like it feels like the Mets and the Phillies and the Padres and those teams just feel too strong to fall back. And especially like the Brewers and the Cubs, those two teams are going to make it in some capacity. Most likely, I still think that they get overtaken by the Phillies and the Dodgers. So whoever makes the division winner is the third seed and still plays in that wild card round. But I mean, it's going to be so fascinating to see how that final wild card spot pans out because I still know, man, like somebody makes a smart move in here. Somebody goes and gets Eugenio Suarez. Somebody goes and gets, like a good pitcher out there. Like is Sandy Alcantara that guy? I'm not really sure, but like who makes the big swing right now is why it's so interesting to look at it from this lens, a week plus from the deadline.
One thing I can't comprehend is how a team can be 3.5 out, 4 out, and be sellers at the deadline. I mean, what's that say to your fan base, right? What does that say about the franchise? And I agree with what Sully's saying as far as who's going to get in and the National League being so tough. But the fact remains, you're a series sweep away from getting in, or a 5-game win streak, which, from getting in wild card contention. And once the playoffs happen, anything can happen. We've seen that in the past. So I can't comprehend that.
Well, and it's funny that I've been saying, and I remember when we did one of our series previews, Stacy from Locked On Yankees and I were talking that the two leagues are very different. The National League is very top heavy. There's some really, truly bad teams in the National League and a couple of really terrific teams. The American League, we both agreed, there is no super team. You basically have the parity that everyone has wanted in baseball, because in the American League, you don't have the best team. If I would put money down on an American League team to go to the World Series right now, I'm still betting on the Astros. The Astros still, I mean, we're sleeping on them. If they're healthy, if they get some of their players back and healthy for the postseason, I think we're sleeping on them. I think they're a good team.
We did go 19 minutes without talking about them, so there's definitely some sleeping
and it's sort of like I'm going,
too.
they're really talented, and they're I think they'll hold off Seattle. Do you want to know just a little something about how we have seen some basically some parity and that the American League has been pretty even-handed? Booney mentioned that there's realistically only 3 teams that are out of it in the American League. Because Minnesota, has a losing record, but if they go on they're 4.5 out. If they go on a winning streak, next thing you know, they're up 2.5. They're 2.5 out, and we're going in August.
And they won 13 in a row already this year.
Right, exactly. They're very, and every one of these teams are very streaky. The three teams that are out of it, they could say, you better start selling. Baltimore, your Sacramento A's, and the Chicago White Sox.
Right.
What do those three teams also have in common? They've all won the division this decade.
Yeah.
They've all, I mean, the A's were in the COVID year, but that's winning the division. That was the division. They won it. Chicago won it the next year. And Baltimore was a 100-win team. You have to go all the way back to 2023 in order to find that. So, every team has given their fans at least some false hope. But I really think that Arizona should be sellers, even though they're only 5 games out, because they have to leapfrog St. Louis, San Francisco, Cincinnati, and hope that San Diego falls apart. And they have so many expiring contracts, so many that they won't trade one for one. But if they package together, hey, you want pitching depth and a third baseman? Here you go. Here's
and they're all
pitchers
valuable.
and a third baseman. Here you
They're
go.
all valuable. Yeah, like that's
and you get a couple of players back, and they still are a talented team going into next year.
And that's the interesting part about the Diamondbacks. It's also what interests me a little bit about the A's when it comes to the bona fide sellers, because there's a lot of teams that are calling about Mason Miller. Curious as to how available he really is. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had a service emergency, like a burst pipe. If the first plumber didn't answer the phone, did you wait? Of course not, because you just called the next one. That's why having a reliable business line is so important. And that's why you need OpenPhone. OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system that helps you streamline and scale customer communication, all from an app on your phone or your computer. If you've juggled 2 phones just to keep up with business and personal calls and making them all separate, OpenPhone solves that instantly. OpenPhone is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnMLB. That's OpenPhone.com/LockedOnMLB. And if you have an existing number with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. If you can't watch your favorite Locked On MLB show on YouTube, you can always listen to them on your favorite podcasting app. We are on every single one of them out there. And by the way, a lot of different Locked On MLB shows started postcasts this year. Your favorite team might be live on your favorite Locked On MLB channel directly at the end of your favorite team's game. Go check them out today. All right, so we've talked about the bona fide World Series teams. We talked about the bubble teams, and now let's look at the sellers, the teams that in one degree or another, because I think there's a big difference when you're talking about sellers like the Atlanta Braves and sellers like the Arizona Diamondbacks, because I just don't necessarily think that the Braves are going to make as many trades. I think there's a lot of what they do is just hoping that everybody gets healthy for next year. But like you mentioned with the Diamondbacks, they got a lot of expiring contracts. And then when you look at Boney's A's, there's definitely some interesting players that teams could want to acquire. Mason Miller seems to be the #1 guy that is always being talked about, and yet it never seems like he's available. Is it this year? Is he getting traded this year, Boone?
I tell you what's going to happen if the A's do make any moves. First of all, I hope it's the right deal. Second of all, if it does happen, it'll be a package deal. It's going to be one of 2 things, and both of them are going to be packaged with Severino. The reason it's Severino's due $22 million next year, and he has a player option for 2027, which I'm sure he's already opted in on. So you have that, right? So I can see a Mason Miller, Severino go, or I can see a Jeffrey Springs, Severino type of deal, right? Springs has a nice contract, $12.5 million due next year, and then a team option for 2027. So I can see a combination if it makes sense for the A's and they get something in return.
Yeah, they'd have to get if they're going to deal Miller. There's a better chance that I'll be pitching for the A's in Kansas City for in 2027 than Severino. I mean, let's get down to brass tacks.
Right.
He
Are you
is.
saying there's a chance?
I remember when my mom used to take me to the wallpaper store in Waltham, Massachusetts, and I just would be like, "Why am I here? I'm so bored. I hate being here. I hate being here." And that was more cheerful than Luis Severino in Sacramento right now.
Yeah.
And so he signed a contract, and the situation in Sacramento has been try not to get in trouble here, not ideal.
It's not ideal.
And
It
and
stinks.
they're going to fight. And but he's going to be dealt. In order to trade, if they're going to trade Miller, if they traded him last year, the final year in Oakland, they would have burnt everything to the ground because
Right.
Miller was so popular in Oakland. It was the last year he was on the. I was there the final game. It was blah blah. We all know that. All right. If they were to trade him, they would have to, and they would probably package him like you said, Booty. They would package it for a team saying, "Hey, you want pitching depth? We got pitching depth." I'm sounding like I'm selling in a rug store here. What do you want here? We can make it work. You'd have to get a real can't miss on the verge of being called up, like either slugger or pitcher to immediately plug into the team. Like not like, oh, like 10 years down the road. No. They have to be in Sacramento, no later than September, pitching great. If you're saying, okay, we're going to dump the Severino and Springs contract. Thank you.
Contract.
Thank you. Cal State Fullerton only accepts the brightest and best. Then you're probably not going to get as, I mean, then I hope you get just some good young players and you're saying, hey, for whenever the Las Vegas Stadium opens, whenever that happens, they'll be ready to go. But for Miller, it's got to be someone like right away.
Yeah.
Because they have some young players. Like obviously Jacob Wilson has been terrific. He's been as advertised. Nick Kurtz has been terrific. And so you have to be saying, okay, we are putting together the pieces for that when we do contend, wherever city we're playing in, when we finally do contend, like, oh, I can't believe they traded Miller. Well, but you got to, and over the years, you see that, look at, I've given and they're probably going to and they may put Sears in a deal as well because.
Yeah, that's a possibility too.
Look at, I've gotten on ownership. I've been very subtle, but I've been gotten on ownership of the A's a little bit subtly over the last few years. The management of the A's have made some very good trades over the years.
Yeah.
They brought in good young players who have done the job well. And so if you give them the car keys and say, look at, I have more faith that the A's will get something good for, Miller and Springs, possibly Sears. We all know Severino's gone. Then say, I mean, there's been some teams like when the Orioles whiffed on Manny Machado, they had an MVP candidate and they whiffed on Manny Machado. You see sometimes in these big deals, like you got nothing back from. Or I don't know. I mean, like imagine. I know there's something like this will never happen, but let's say the Red Sox traded Mookie Betts and they got basically active. Not something like that would ever happen, but in a weird twilight zone where they would basically salary dump Mookie Betts because one of the wealthiest owners in all of sports want to save basically this. But like that, I mean, they got piddly poo for Mookie Betts.
So let's say this: who is the biggest name player, the biggest needle mover who gets traded in this deadline? Obviously, Devers. Everybody always says, "Well, the best player's already been traded."
Suarez,
but from now to the end, who's the biggest?
I think Suarez.
Yeah.
Unless there's a banana boats trade. Remember when John Lester was traded? Whenever there's like, no, when you saw this happening. There could be something like, the Red Sox possibly dealing Jared Duran because they have a bunch of outfielders there. I personally, as a native New Englander, do not want to see them trade Jared Duran.
I like Duran, yeah.
But when you see there are some teams like the aforementioned Rangers who know that they are one big hitter away. If you put one major league hitter in that lineup, suddenly they could be a potential World Series contender.
Sully, let me ask you a question though. Wouldn't you be pissed as a Red Sox fan? They're in the wild card right now. If they decided to trade someone like Duran, wouldn't you be pissed?
Well, yes, I would. I was livid when they traded Devers. I'm not in that clubhouse. What do I care? But it depends on what the trade is. If the Red Sox trade Duran, it better be a 3-team trade. It better be one of those deals where they trade this. Some team gets some young players. The Red Sox get like a major league starting pitcher. It has to be something like that because it can't just be we're trading Duran. Like they trade Duran for Jordan Hicks, a VHS copy of Remo Williams' The Adventure Begins, and a flat can of Sprite, and salary relief. And we had Gabby on the show yesterday from Locked On Red Sox, and we were talking about that. With that salary relief, they better treat this offseason like supermarket sweep with them running around with their shopping carts, throwing players in there left and right. But I'd be if they traded him for as a salary dump, which is not really a big salary dump, or for hey, we got these two people who are playing in for the San Jose Giants right now, and in the year 2086 they should be a decent second baseman. Yeah, I'll flip a table. But if they get, let's say they flip them, they get like two major league pitchers, and they get some pitching depth in there. I'm not saying I would do that trade because I like Duran. But you better be putting something on the table for this year. Because remember, the Red Sox, since winning the World Series with a little bit of shenanigans in 2018, have made the playoffs fewer times than the A's have. As many times as the Reds have. Let me put it that way.
We don't like to talk about the 2020 playoff there, that's for sure. But I know this, without risk of flipping a table, there's going to be a lot to watch this next week, and your favorite team has a Locked On MLB podcast that has it covered. Sully's got the league covered. Booney's got the A's covered. I've got the Reds covered, and so much more. Plus, we will be back with a new MLB Squad show at the end of the trade deadline, Thursday night into Friday morning. We're going to be reacting to all the biggest trades here on Locked On MLB Squad. Make sure you check us out for that. But until then, make sure that you are subscribed to Locked On MLB because we've got the best baseball league in the world covered every single day.